If you are a fan of the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast and would like to help support the show, there's a great way that you can do that and start a new fashion trend. We have a new merchandise page on the website which features t-shirts and hoodies that are available for sale on Amazon. Just click on merchandise in the top menu and all of the links will be there, or go directly to divebarrockstar.com/merchandise. Get started early on your Christmas shopping at divebarrockstar.com. Welcome to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, a show exploring the lives of professional musicians of all types, touring musicians, recording artists, songwriters, engineers, bar bands, wedding bands, and anyone making their living in the music industry. Whether you've dreamed of being a professional or you already are one, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Eric Baines, and I hope that you not only find some entertainment here, but also some helpful tips, trade secrets, and ideas that will help you achieve your dreams. So welcome to episode 20. This is the 20th episode. I can't believe that we're that far in. I wasn't sure how long this thing was going to last. And here we are on episode 20. So I'd just like to really give a sincere thank you for all the people that are listening and fans of the show and hitting me up on Facebook and, telling me how much they liked or disliked the episode. Haven't had many dislikes. I will say that. And also just ask one favor. If you're listening on Apple, could you maybe take a second and click a 5-star rating? That would really help out. Or if you have a little more time, to leave a quick review would be incredible. And if you're listening on Spotify, just click follow. That's all I need. And it really helps out the show. And it really helped to bring the podcast to a wider audience and keep the show going, basically. But I really appreciate everybody listening. It's really been fun. And thanks to all the guests that have been on the show. It's just been so cool. And I got a long list of awesome guests that we're going to be interviewing over the next, however long I can keep this show going. And that brings me to today's guest, who is an incredible guitar player, really good friend of mine. And we're just going to kind of nerd out on this. There's going to be a lot of names thrown at you. So many to where I just don't think I'm going to have the time to tell you who they all are. But thanks to Google, we can all go and check out people, and you'll recognize most of them, I'm sure. But, I've talked before about the language of names on this show. We tend to speak to each other in names, us musicians, My guest, though, has recorded and toured with an incredible list of artists and musicians like Hilary Duff, Mindi Abair, Michael McDonald, Lauryn Hill, Sly Stone, Billy Ray Cyrus, Michael Bolton, Stephen Bishop, David Pack, Bobby Caldwell, and the list goes on and on and on. It's really long and incredible. He's currently the musical director for saxophonist Warren Hill, and he also has 2 solo records out. One is called Identity, which you can find anywhere and on iTunes. And the other one is called Gitronica, which is only available on his website at jgore.com. So please enjoy my conversation with Jay Gore.
Sporting the SM7B.
Yes, I know. That's my podcast mic, man.
That's the mic, man.
Well, not only that, though, I've been singing on it, too, and it's phenomenal, really.
I made a mistake. I did a voiceover for a book, for a novel. I read a novel.
Right.
If you're going to listen to the book on tape, it's about a 7.25 hour listen.
Mm-hmm.
But to track it, it took me 13, 14 hours.
Right. Yeah.
And not obviously in one sitting. I did it over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then the editing. And here's the mistake. I used a really nice large diaphragm condenser mic.
Right.
Which was a huge mistake because it picks up every breath, every little
everything. Yes.
And so it was like 30 hours of me going through and editing and then putting I put some sort of a gate on it and had to set the threshold right because so I'm going SM7B next time for sure.
Yeah.
Didn't we do something years ago, like an original thing?
Yeah. Well, I was trying to remember. I don't even remember how I met you. I remember doing a gig at Cafe Cordial with you and Shane August. And,
Right.
And then we were at Shane's place and we were co-writing a thing.
Right.
And the thing is, I think back then I was super focused and I was a jazz guy and I was a smooth jazz guy and we were kind of doing rock stuff and I was way behind on you guys were. In fact, I think you were sort of self-titled studio nerds, and like into sounds and mics and technique. And I was like, I had Cakewalk on a shitty computer that barely worked at that point, so I was so behind. And so I remember there being one session and then it just sort of never went anywhere after that. But the gig
kind of happened. I've done a million of those projects with Shane, and a lot of them never get finished. Some of them have. Some of them have, and some of them haven't. And that's just the way it is in the big city,
Yeah, absolutely. But that was 20 years ago. Like I just passed 20 years of being here, and that was really probably within the first year of me getting here.
That's probably how we met. We probably just met at Cordial one night.
Yeah.
Somewhere, Cordial or La Vallée or the Spud, something like that. We probably just met, jamming together at some point. Because I don't remember the actual moment of meeting you either.
Right. Yeah. It's weird, but I'm glad we did.
I am too, man.
Thanks for doing this podcast with me.
Yeah, man. I'm excited. Thanks for it's great, man. I love it. Dive bar rock starts. Like as soon as I saw it, I thought back to my 20s, because that was me in my 20s. I was a dive bar rock star in my 20s for sure.
So you're actually Zooming from Greece? Is that where you are?
I was in Greece until a couple of days ago. Now I'm in Bucharest.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah.
What are you doing out there? Is this music related?
It's not. My wife is from here. And we were able to go to Greece. They have my sister-in-law and my wife have they have a small property there in Athens that they use as an Airbnb property. So we went and stayed in their property. So
nice.
And we waited out we were there. It was supposed to be for 2 weeks. And then it became 3 weeks because it was just so perfect. The weather was just, we're in October and it's still 90 degrees during the day. And it's, so there was no reason to come. So now it was time to come here to a place where they have better Wi-Fi and it's just more modern in Bucharest than it is in Athens. So now we're here and I'll go home when I need to. Right now there's no work. I had tons and tons of tours this year that got canceled.
Yeah.
And postponed. I mean, everything, man. I haven't been on a stage with another musician since March.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, well, that's not true. I've had 2 gigs just recently, but yeah, it was like 6.5 months of nothing.
My main thing nowadays is Warren Hill. I'm his MD. And
cool.
He has a daughter named Olivia, who's an amazing pop singer. And I'm her MD as well. And there were tons of plans. And, Warren's got not only his own solo career, but he's got a jazz festival in Cancun and a jazz festival in Cabo.
Oh, wow.
And then he's going to be doing one in the Dominican Republic and I think one in Vegas. So I'm at all those festivals. And I'm also Adam Hawley and myself are the main stage guitar players for Dave Cause's cruise.
Oh, got you. Right.
So all that stuff just went postponed, Yeah. I locked myself in my studio like everybody else did. Thank God I have a nice studio like you do at home. And I've just been writing like crazy and recording.
That's great.
And, the odd recording session here and there, the remote stuff. Because I'm dialed in. I got all the amps set up and all my guitars and all that. So I can just really easily, I got a nice Pro Tools rig and I can easily record whatever people need done. I did a country thing before I came out here. I did a bunch of mandolin stuff. And
that's cool.
Got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because I play with Keiko from, maybe once a year or so I play with Keiko.
You play with her on the cruises, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I played with her in Hawaii once for Michael Paulo had a jazz festival out there and I was kind of the house guy. He brought me out there to be the house guy. I think he uses locals out there now to do the house band thing.
Yeah.
I slipped and fell into this smooth jazz genre.
Yeah.
And I went straight from Hilary Duff, who at the time was the greatest, biggest pop star in the world. I mean, the bands that were opening for us were bands like Kelly Clarkson And Maroon 5 was opening up for us, and Jason Mraz was opening up for us. Jessica Simpson. I mean, just people who are major stars now were opening up for us when we were on tour.
Right.
And then I came home and I did some stuff with this actor named Scott Grimes, who's an amazing singer. And I've been working with him since the early 90s and off and on and off and on. We put the band back together when he's between TV shows and stuff like that. But I went straight to Mindi Abair called me. And I knew Mindy because of Shane August.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We did a steak joint gig in the mid 90s in Westwood. Shane and I, a duet. And he knew Mindy, and Mindy would come and play sax with us.
Wow.
And that's how I met Mindy. And then when Mindy got me in there, it was like, Andre Barry?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Andre was Mindy's bass player. And and he and our keyboard player, Rodney Lee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He and Rodney were doing they were gigging with everybody in the genre.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, hey, after about 3 or 4 years with pretty much only playing with Mindy, and Mindy had enough work back then.
Right.
That it was fine. Just playing with her was fine. It was good enough work. And I enjoyed it because Mindy's a very, she's a very benevolent boss. She's very much, look, I need you to learn these songs and then completely play them the way you want to play them.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Make them Jay Gore. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so there'd be acoustic guitar stuff, and I'd be like, I'm going to play this song on electric guitar because it'll rock more. Cool. She's like that,
Yeah. That's cool.
I'll tell you, because playing with Keiko,
it's not like that.
It's not like that. Yeah. I said to Andre, how are you getting all these gigs with all these other artists, And he said, I said, how do I get them to know me? And he just looked at me and he grinned. And he goes, don't worry, man. They're going to all know you. Everybody's going to know you. Trust me. They're going to know you. Just wait it out. Mm-hmm. So about a year later, we're playing a big show with like Dave Koz, Boney James, and Kenny Loggins. And it's at the Nokia downtown, the Nokia Theater. And I'm downstairs underground in the, where the dressing rooms are. Mm-hmm. And down the long hallway, Boney James starts walking towards me. And I'd never met Boney James in my life. Never, ever met the guy in my life. Mm-hmm. And he's walking towards me. And as he walks past me, he goes, hey, Jay, how you doing? and then Andre's words came back to me of everybody will know you, don't worry, they'll know you.
And you're like, mission accomplished.
And then the Cause Cruise is great because when you do the Cause Cruise, I get to play with all these artists. And then they're like, a lot of them have their own bands, but at least I'm the backup guy. At least, I can call Jay. My regular guy can't do it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's go back to Mindy for a second because I also think it's such a great fit because I kind of knew you like, we got to know each other. We can't remember how as a rock dude, so. Right.
I am a rock dude. Yeah.
And, but I also remember when Mindy came out, cause I was just Mr. Smooth Jazz guy at that, cause I got the Keiko gig pretty much. I mean, I started playing with her 6 months after I got here. Then that lasted for a few months. And then I kind of didn't play with her for a year. And then after that, it was just Keiko, for 12 years, so.
Such a hard gig too, man.
Yeah.
It's a very challenging gig.
Yes, but very, very, very cool. She's awesome.
Absolutely.
To work for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I do remember, and I was also playing with Greg Karukas at that point, and he was hosting this sort of weekly jam at this club in Hollywood, and I can't remember the name of it. It was some sort of Mediterranean or Moroccan theme or something. Anyways, but it was like the Wave was hosting it, was like sponsoring it. So Peter White would come out every week. Right. Everybody would show up. Jonathan Butler, and we would just jam, and it was cool. But Mindy came out a couple of times, and I was like, "Oh, who is this?" And then after that, it was like she just took over the airwaves. Like she became so massive, not because of our jam, but because of the label was really pushing her. But what struck me is that she came with this pop thing that was very different. And like all of a sudden, and I just heard it, and I'm a pop guy, really, As soon as I heard it, I was like, whoa, this is the future of smooth jazz,
Right.
And sure enough, over the next years, like playing with different people, they'd send me their CDs to learn. I'm like, this sounds exactly like that Mindi Abair.
Right.
But she came to the smooth jazz and brought the pop thing with her because she had played with the Backstreet Boys. Is that right? Or
she had worked with, I think it was the Backstreet Boys, and she also worked with Aerosmith and Duran Duran.
Right. So she brought that pop to the smooth jazz.
Right. She's a rock and roller, man. She knows her rock and roll, and she grew up on the road. Her dad's a musician.
Got you. I did not know.
And she's from Florida, and she grew up on the road. She was a little girl, and her dad was schlepping her all over the country in a van, gig to gig to gig, with our drummer Jamie Tate's dad.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So Jay Gore bringing the rock to smooth jazz. You're also another guy who came to smooth jazz, but didn't really change who you were, and you come with some gritty, edgy tones. You're playing a Strat, which is not a typical smooth jazz instrument, and so I just thought it was such a perfect fit, for you to be working with Mindi. Did all those things work together well?
I have to say that it wasn't what I had planned for my life. When I was doing the Duff thing, I was like, this is great. Like I'm doing arenas now, and I'm doing proper bus tours, and this is what I was already, when I started playing with Duff, I was 34.
Wow.
And I'd been a road dog, man, all through my 20s, but I was doing the road dog thing, not at that level, as far as not at that budgetary level. You know what I mean? Not at world's biggest pop star level.
Right. You were in a van, probably.
I was in a van. Right. It was very weird because I came off of this thing where, I had a guitar tech and I had a guy. All I literally did was just, be in the lobby when I was supposed to and be on stage when I was supposed to. And that was my day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I went to this smooth jazz world where you actually work hard. You know what I mean? Nobody's doing anything. You're backlining gear, which took me the longest time to get used to that backline thing, because I'm like Mr. Boutique amp guy. I'm on the road with Hillary Duff, and I've got a Bradshaw rig and a Bogner and a Rivera and, a custom switching system and all this elaborate crap.
Right.
And then I'm playing with Mindi, and I'm like, what do you mean I can't get a Bogner in Poughkeepsie? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Well, this is like you're ruining my whole show if I don't have a Bogner. I don't have a divided by 13 or whatever kind of, Give me a minute to kind of go, listen, I gotta put that shit aside and get on board with what I need to do now to make this shit all happen.
Right.
And I got smart with it real quick. I realized, what I needed to do. And the thing with Mindi was great because, like I said, she let me be me. And because you've done the smooth jazz circuit and you know how those artists are. They're all very talented. They're all way more talented than they ever get credit for being.
Yeah.
They can all blow their asses off. They're all readers. They all bebop the motherfucker out of everything.
Right.
And they play pop jazz music because it keeps them working and it keeps them making good money. And I don't think that's a sellout, man. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's what you got to do. And then when we have these great festivals and these after hours jams and everybody's up there playing giant steps and you're like, wow, Rick Braun is badass. Kirk Whalum is badass. Like these guys are legit jazz players, man.
Yeah.
They just don't want to be freezing on a subway in New York City, man. You know what I mean? They want to raise families and do nice things and have vacations. And there's nothing wrong with that,
Right. No.
Mindi was great because Mindi, look, I have my personality is an acquired taste. I don't always say the most appropriate things at the most appropriate times, especially now in this really ridiculously politically correct world that we live in. Listen, I tell Steve Lukather jokes that make him cringe. I mean, you know what I mean? And Mindi would just roll her eyes and goes, and just shake her head. You know what I mean? She could deal with that, because she's awesome.
Yeah.
So it was a great fit. I think your observation of that situation is pretty accurate. it was a great fit with her. I missed it. She called me. It was basically 2004 to 2014. It was 10 years. And she called me and said, listen, I got to do this Bone Shakers thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, it may work, it may not. And I may have you back, but I got to team up with Randy right now, Randy Jacobs, and do this Bone Shakers thing. And I knew why she did it. I mean, I'm not mad at her at all. I have a career because of her.
Right.
But you see how the genre is. The genre is it's losing radio stations weekly.
Right.
And when you lose a radio station, whatever city that radio station's in, all the gigs go away with it.
Right. Exactly.
So you might go from working with an artist, you might work with Peter White, and you might do 80 gigs a month, 80 gigs a year. I mean,
mm-hmm.
When I saw the genre going from 80 or 85 gigs a year to the next year, we had like 70. And the year after that, we had like 58 gigs. And the year after that, it was like 43 gigs. And the year after that, it was 30 gigs. And you just see, why aren't we doing that gig again? Oh, the radio station changed format. Why aren't we doing that gig in Louisville? Oh, the radio station changed format.
Right.
And so now you've got every one of these artists fighting tooth and nail to get on watercolors.
Right.
Because the wave is now not all over the world anymore for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And the 2 or 3 radio promo people that are in that genre who know everybody are like trying to tactfully plan everybody's releases out so they don't conflict with each other because we're all friends and we all love each other and it's our genre. And, if one of us does well, we all do well, that whole thing. And listen, man, I mean, it's cool because it's work. And the people are amazing, as you know, all the people, you work with Keiko and you've got somebody who is very, very picky about the way her parts are played. But her music to me is more classical music than jazz music.
Right.
It's parts that interlock. I might have 40 bars tacit. Yeah. And then I'll come in at bar 41 and play some 16th note run for one bar, and that's my whole part in the whole song. Just that one bar. You know what I mean? And then you're just sitting there with your arms folded looking,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how she is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she definitely comes from that classical mindset. Absolutely. Yeah. And for me though, it was fun because you get into that, how do I recreate this every night, note for note, and make it sound fun and fresh, like it's the first time I've ever played it. You know what I mean? Right. And making her happy too was just part of the gig. And she's I don't know. I have nothing but love for her. After
me too. She asked me to play a part one time, and it was a whole melody. She said, "Listen, I want you to play the second verse melody on this song." And I said, okay, because when I'm on the Cause Cruise, I've got minimum 7 shows to learn. Minimum.
Right.
That's just on the main stage. Then I got other little things I'm doing in smaller lounges with other artists, So I might have 12, 13, 14 shows that I got to learn.
Wow.
And I said, okay, Keiko, I'll do my best for you because I have a lot of other things to do, but I'll try my best to learn this. And she says, well, it's written out, and her charts are written out, and I'm not a great reader. Look, all full disclosure, I'm not that guy that can read fly shit. I'm not Tommy Tedesco,
Right.
And I'm not going to read her lines on the fly. Absolutely not.
Right.
And so that day at sound check, she says to me, it was about 4 days later, she says to me, so are you okay with second verse? I said, Keiko, I got the first 8 bars for you. Because it was like a 16-bar verse. I said, Keiko, I got the first 8 bars. I got them locked in perfectly. And she goes, okay, that's great. That's great, Jay. Thank you so much. You play 8 bars, and then I'll play the next 8 bars. It'll be wonderful. Thank you. She was just so happy that cool. I just made some effort. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and she's got this really interesting, subtle way of just, I always say she wants it like this, and she's gonna be on your ass until it's that way. It's great. She's gonna be nice about it, but she's gonna stop hounding you until that's right.
Right.
And it's a pretty cool way to be because it keeps tensions low in the band, but you get what you need out of people. Exactly. I forgot what we were talking about. Now I'm all reminiscing about a million Keiko stories.
Right. I know.
Oh man. But but the genre I know what I was going to say, but also you have these package deals too that have, as rhythm section players, like for me, I started to see the work start to go down because now you have 3 artists going out with one band.
One band.
And Keiko has always been super loyal. She's always wanted a band. She has a band. But even she was starting to do the cruises, starting to do stuff with Brian Simpson. And like, okay, well, I have to consider that as far as my future in this genre and being a bass player, you know? And that must have been cutting into your work as well.
Well, I was lucky because when that started happening, I was with Mindi, and all of Mindi's music was guitar-driven music. All the songs were based on a guitar riff.
Got you.
So and Mindi's also, you know, other than maybe Candy Dulfer, you know, she's the top female artist.
Right.
You know,
right.
She insisted whenever doing these packages that I have to have my guitar player. You know, and so I didn't. Sometimes our drummer would be out of it, or our keyboard player, or, you know, but I was always there, and I got to tour with great people. I got to tour with freaking David Pack, man.
Yeah,
I mean, and we got to play all the Ambrosia stuff with him, man.
Yeah,
and it was like one of those things that August was talking about when he looks over and he sees Dennis DeYoung. He's like, "My God, what am I doing here?" You know, and it's like that with David Pack. I'm on stage. And I'm singing, "That's how much I feel."
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I had to learn. And I don't sing like you and August at all, man. I can handle some low harmonies, but I'm not a singer. And now I'm having to learn these intricate harmonies, man. These Ambrosia harmonies, you know.
Yeah.
You know, biggest part of me, sunrise in your eyes, realize, you know.
Yeah.
It goes like major to minor in the same chord. I'm having to do half steps, and I had to practice. I would sit there and play all the lines on my guitar and sing along with my guitar playing, you know, to get the muscle memory, because I don't have that like you guys do, where you can just, you know, get that muscle memory in your voice, you know. But it was amazing. And again, looking over David Pack every night, man, like standing right next to the guy. And
I did 2 shows with Ambrosia, subbing for Joe Puerta on bass. He had shoulder surgery and couldn't play, but he was still there doing all the singing. So I didn't have to sing, but it was intimidating because here's the bass player right in front of me all night. But I don't know how much Ambrosia you played with him, but the hit songs that David Pack wrote and sang are great. They're challenging, but they're reasonable. The rest of the stuff is prog rock from you know, like,
because he's a strong guitar player.
Yeah.
He doesn't get enough credit for his guitar playing. And the thing is, we didn't get deep with them. We did, you know, How Much I Feel, Biggest Part of Me, You're the Only Woman. I think those were really like all we did. And then we did a blues tune, like a B.B. King tune, because he liked singing the blues, you know?
Yeah.
But he would give me the guitar solos.
Wow.
You know, it's like, dude, I'm the sideman guy, you know, like I'm not, and he'd be like, no, I love how you play. You know, you can please take the solos, you know, take the solos. And he played great when we would jam at soundcheck and stuff. He's such a tasteful player, and his tone was, he's one of those guys, he's like, doesn't have the greatest gear and doesn't care. And then he plugs into some rental amp with some crappy $40 pawn shop overdrive pedal, you know? And it's like, fuck, that tone is killing, man. I got this like custom made buffered Mogami craziness in front of me that cost me thousands of dollars. And like, he just plugs into some like 9-volt battery operated thing and just like sounds so good. It's just, it's in your hands, you know?
Yeah.
It's in the hands of the older. One night at the Big Potato, I got to play, Mike Landau played, and after hours we jammed, and Mike played drums and I played on Mike's rig. And all night long I was drooling in his tone. And then I plug into his guitar and his rig and his amp, and I'm playing. And I'm like, this thing sounds terrible.
Interesting.
It's in his freaking hands. I stopped chasing tone then. I stopped chasing other people's tones. I stopped buying something because Eddie Van Halen used it. I stopped buying something because Lukather used it, or whoever, Stevie Ray Vaughan, whoever it might be. I stopped buying shit because other guys were using it, because it's all in your freaking hands, man.
I think that's absolutely right.
I've seen videos of Eddie playing backstage on an electric guitar acoustically.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of hear him with the, this like, and you're like, that's the tone. It's not even going through an amp, and that's his, like, the brown sound is in his fucking fingers, man.
Yeah.
It ain't in the gear. It ain't in the gear, man.
Yeah.
It's not.
No. Yeah, I saw Neil Schon at NAMM one time trying out an acoustic guitar. And same thing that you're just saying,
Right.
just like there it is, there's the sound.
If you study it,
shredding on it too.
Yeah. If you study it, it makes sense. If you study it, okay. If you're going to play slide guitar, you're going to use a glass slide, you're going to use a brass slide, you're going to use a chrome slide. They all sound different.
Yeah.
Okay. Same guy playing all three slides, going to have different tone. Then you've got the angle of your pick attack. Are you hitting the note perfectly perpendicular to the string, or are you kind of angling your pick a little bit? You know what I mean? All that stuff matters. Where are you resting your hand on the guitar? Are you back towards the bridge more? I knew a guy that fanned his fingers out and rested them on the pick guard so that he could pick between the neck pickup and the middle pickup on his Strat when he played.
Mm-hmm.
And he had very nice warm tone because of that. Right. And I said, that's an interesting style. He says, yeah, when I was younger, I really worked to do this, because he didn't play with his hand free. He played with his fingers anchored like this, and he would just pick this way.
Wow.
And he had this beautiful warm tone on a Strat, just because he wasn't picking back over the bridge pickup like most of us do.
Right.
But all that shit matters.
Yeah.
All that shit, the acidity of your skin, all of it all matters.
Absolutely. So speaking of Eddie Van Halen, I'm kind of excited to talk to you about it anyways, because, obviously he just died, and I'm kind of just by chance have like 3 guitar players in a row on the show. But just listening to you play, because I've spent the last 2 days just cyber stalking you. Obviously, a massive amount of Eddie Van Halen influence. He must have been important to you. You grew up in LA, sort of a hometown hero.
Yeah.
How much of an influence was he on your playing?
Oh, I mean, he during the developmental years of my guitar playing, he was without a doubt the most influential person in my life. I was never one of those people to emulate him on a personal level, but as a guitarist, look, I knew from a young age that I wasn't going to be an innovative kind of guy like he is. I mean, people don't realize that aren't in the music business. I mean, the guy literally changed the way we do everything. And, I mean, we could say that about Les Paul with multi-track recording and solid body electric guitars. And it's funny when people want to compare Eddie to Hendrix. And I mean, I realize that Hendrix is this god that we can never say anything against. And I never will, because I agree with all the Hendrix. Hail Hendrix. Yes. He didn't live long enough to leave as much of a mark as Eddie Van Halen did. He didn't live long enough to have the legacy and the catalog that Eddie Van Halen has.
Right.
A perfect example. Eddie Van Halen played the guitar solo on Beat It.
Right.
Okay. Nobody ever thinks about the reason for this. The reason for this was Michael Jackson saying to Quincy, "You're my producer. I want everybody buying my record. I don't want to be a black artist. I want to be an artist."
Right.
Off the Wall was wonderful, but white kids didn't buy it. How do we get white people to buy my record? The white kids, they love rock music. It's the 80s. We got to get Eddie Van Halen. They got Steve Lukather. They're sitting right there in the freaking room with them. You can't ask for a better guitar player. Right. And they're we call Eddie Van Halen. So what happens is all I know is I went out and bought a Michael Jackson record.
Right.
That I probably wouldn't have bought. Maybe years later, when my musical palette was more developed, and I was like, oh, this Michael Jackson's a freaking genius, and Quincy's a genius, and Greg Fillinganes is a genius, and they're all geniuses, and they're all making a record together. But when you think about it, it was the most intelligent thing ever, because all the rock fans went out and bought a Michael Jackson record that they never would have bought.
Yeah.
And the funny story is that everybody knows the story about Eddie hanging up on Quincy because he didn't believe it was him, and then never getting paid for the session. Everybody knows this story. But I don't know if people realize this. with David Lee Roth, Van Halen never had an album go to number one. They had number one singles, but they didn't have an album go to number one. So Van Halen releases 1984 and Thriller is released, and Thriller goes number one, and Van Halen's 1984 goes number two.
Wow.
And imagine if Eddie didn't play on Thriller, it may not have gone number one, because it was a whole different demographic of people were buying Thriller, myself included.
Right.
Because Eddie was on it. Yeah. And this pissed off David Lee Roth to no end.
I'm sure.
It was the last album with him, you know?
Yeah.
But he changed it all, man. We can go through, guitars are made differently now because of him. Amplifiers are made differently now because of him. There's an entire business for people building their, companies like Warmoth. People weren't doing that. People went to the music store and they bought a guitar. That was it.
Right.
You dealt with that. I was a kid too, man. I had a Gibson style guitar and I wanted a Strat style guitar, but I liked the sound of the Gibson guitar and the way of the Strat. But it didn't cross my mind to just rip the pickup out of my Gibson and slap it in my Fender.
Right.
You know what I mean? All those things, lowering the voltage on the amp to get more overdrive on it. Now amps are made with extra gain stages in them to do what Eddie was doing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
All the techniques. Everybody wants to talk about the two-hand tapping stuff. Yeah, that's all great. He never said he invented it. People say he invented it. He never said he invented it.
Right.
And he didn't invent it. There's jazz guys from like the 30s. They're finding videos now of these jazz guys doing all that two-handed stuff. But Eddie didn't know about them.
Right.
There was no YouTube in 1973,
Right.
So I can go on and on about Eddie, but yeah, he was my favorite. Even to the day he died, I was still the hugest fan. I went and saw him play all the time. I got to meet him and speak with him one time. And then there was another time I was in an elevator with him. And another time I was at Guitar Center when he came in and bought some keyboards. But there was the one time when he saw me play at a gig I was doing. Mm-hmm. And sat there and watched me, and I went and talked to him afterwards. I actually put a post on my Facebook page last week about it.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yeah, it's a really cool story.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a heartbreaker for me, a heartbreaker for sure. I'm just today I was playing my guitar and I had tears in my eyes just thinking about, my God, I can't believe Ed's not here, breathing the same air as the rest of us anymore,
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of us out of work right now, waiting to get back to playing shows and touring. And I know I've had to do whatever I can do to take my mind off the situation from time to time. And one of the ways to pass the time is to catch up on some books you've missed. But if you're like me and you don't love to read, there's another way you can consume. Audible.com has thousands of titles to choose from, including audiobooks about music production, songwriting, the music business, music theory, instructional audiobooks, and biographies of your favorite musical heroes. But besides audiobooks, you can also listen to podcasts, theatrical performances, A-list comedy, and exclusive audio originals you won't find anywhere else. Right now, you can get a free 30-day trial if you visit audibletrial.com/divebarrockstar. That's audibletrial.com/divebarrockstar, and you can catch up on your audio reading. I'd like to take a second to thank you for listening to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast. As a new podcast, getting the word out is a vital part of what it takes to keep the show on the road, or off the road, as the current case may be. If you would like to support the podcast, all you got to do is subscribe wherever you listen. And if you have an extra minute or two, please leave a review. You can also share and follow the podcast on your social media apps. Okay, enough begging. I hope you're having fun. And once again, thank you for listening. You were playing the Sunset Strip at 13 years old.
Yeah, I was.
Said a lot. So it's so interesting to me as someone who moved here. Anytime I know and meet people that grew up here, but especially someone like you you were young, right in the midst of Eddie Van Halen's moment, and Lukather and Landau and Michael Thompson, Paul Jackson Jr. All these guitar players. You got to sort of watch happened in front of your eyes.
First of all, I have to say, I really admire guys like you and August and all the rest of you because of what you did. You picked up from where you came from and you came to LA because you wanted to be at the top level of everything, because you knew inside of you, you could be with the top level of everything. And when you pick up, there's a lot of people that pick up and move to LA and they go right back home really soon because they realize, oh, I don't belong out here. These guys are next level out here. And I never thought of it that way because I was born and raised out here.
Right.
So that to me is just like, that's it. You know, I'm just lucky because I'm here in the center of it all. And I grew up in West LA. I grew up in a little neighborhood right near Century City, you know, in West LA. Mm-hmm. And I went to school with some guys that we were all the same age, and some mutual friends. I went to one school in the neighborhood, and some of the other guys went to the school that was like, 6 blocks away from my school, also in the same neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And this one friend of mine said, hey, last year I went to this school, and there's a guy there that plays guitar and drums, and they're really great, and you should start a band with these guys. And we all met up and we started this band, and the band was called Frequency.
Cool.
And we wrote our own stuff, man. We were diligent. We were in the 8th grade.
Wow.
We were so focused. I still remember our schedule was Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday after school. Straight from that bell ringing, we all hopped on our bikes and we went to the garage to rehearse. And then it would be either Saturday or Sunday. It was a floating day on the weekend, dependent upon my Little League schedule. And we would do that, man. We would get together, and the other guitar player, and these are guys I'm still really good friends with to this day.
Wow, that's so cool.
The other guitar player is a lawyer now. The drummer is he's an artist. You know, he makes art, and he runs an art gallery. The bass player passed away when we were 21. One of the singers is a film editor now.
Jeez.
And I mean, I'm still friends with all these guys, but we wrote all of our own music, and we had to garage surf because we would be in a garage after school, and it was just a matter of the cops coming enough times for the parent of whoever's garage we were in to be like, that's it, you can't. So we got to my dad's garage last, and the cops would come to my dad's garage. You know, it would be that thing, like they'd bang on the garage door, and they'd open up the garage door, and like the cloud of smoke would pour out, like the Spicoli van in Fast Times at Ridgemont. Because we were advanced for our age in every way.
Right.
If you catch my meaning, and they would say, you got to stop, and you got to stop. So one day they came by the house, and my dad drove up into the driveway at like 5 PM when the cops were just leaving, and they said, these kids can't be doing this. They're breaking noise ordinances, and the neighbors are complaining. And he says, we're going to have to write you a ticket. And he said, my dad says, I don't care, man. They're out there practicing. What does it matter? And he says, I'm going to have to write you a ticket every time I come over here. And he says, look, these kids are back here making music, man. They're not out there doing graffiti. They're not riding skateboards down the street, stealing purses from old ladies. Like, they're doing something productive, man. If you need to write me a $20 fine so that they can practice, I don't care. Write me the fine. I don't care. My dad was cool like that.
That's really cool.
So we had a bunch of tunes, and my drummer, who was a real go-getter, real type A personality, he says, listen, man, we got to get a gig now. I was like, a gig? What are you talking about, a gig? Like, we would invite girls from school to come to the garage after and watch us rehearse. That was good enough for me, man. I was so popular, And he was like, no, we got to go play in a club, and there's the Troubadour. And I was like, we can play at the Troubadour? Yeah. We get on our bikes, we ride up to the Troubadour, and we walk in the back door, and we go up the steps into the offices. And there's this dude in there named Mike. I'm not going to say his last name, but I'll never forget this guy. Mm-hmm. And he goes, what do you kids want? We heard there's no age limit here. Yeah. Well, we want to play here. Oh, really? Yeah, we want to play here. Well, you got a demo tape? What's a demo tape? He's like, you need to bring me a demo tape. You need to go to a studio, and you need to record your songs on a tape, at least 4 songs, and then bring it back to me. Oh shit, how are we going to do that? Keep in mind, this is 1983.
Wow.
Okay, it's analog city, buddy. There's
Mm-hmm.
So we go, and we all beg our parents, And half the guys in the band's parents said no. And my dad and my drummer's dad were like, yeah, go for it, man. Book the studio. We'll do it. We'll pay for it. Yeah. So we went to this recording studio in Glendale. And I remember walking in there and seeing the console. And I sat down behind the console. And I remember just really loudly saying to the guy, I want to know what every one of these knobs and every one of these buttons does. I want to know what all of them do before I leave here. Right now, I want to know. So we get in the room and he's got the gobos up and we're playing live together. And we track 4 songs and we track them. We do 3 takes of each song.
Mm-hmm.
So we bang it out fast because we're well rehearsed. You know, I think we banged out. We time between getting there, miking everything up. Oh, I broke a string in the middle of a take. And he goes, go ahead and change your string. And I said, I don't have a string. And he comes out and he goes, what do you mean you don't have a string? I said, I broke my string. I don't have a spare string. He goes, starts yelling at me. Dad, it's so unprofessional. How could you dare come to a recording studio and not bring spare strings for me? It's unprofessional. And I go, dude, I'm 13, bro. I'm 13, man. I've never been to a studio before. So he gave me a string. So we were out of there in maybe 3 hours and did a mix and the whole thing. We got our demo now. We go back to the Troubadour. We're so excited. Here, dude, here's our demo tape. He puts it on. He's listening to it. He goes, this isn't you guys.
Wow.
We said, well, who do you think it is? He says, maybe this is your big brothers or something like that. This isn't you guys. We said, we swear this is us, man. This is us. He says, I don't know. He says, where do you guys rehearse? We said, we rehearsed just a few blocks away from here in my garage. He says, when's your next rehearsal? We told him the next rehearsal was, he goes, I'm going to come down and see, I want to see your rehearsal. Which when you think about it now, it sounds, what club promoter would offer to come and actually watch he came to the rehearsal, man. He showed up and he sat there and watched the rehearsal. He said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you guys a Sunday night. And we said, no. We want a Friday or Saturday. We want to open for Rat, or we want to open for Great White, or we want to open for Poison, or we want to open for Wasp, or we want to. Seriously, man, we're like going because all these bands were still local bands,
Wow.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, first of all, you can't open for those bands because there are bands that have been playing at the club for a lot longer and have earned the right to be on a bill with them. Wow. We said, dude, we can't play on a Sunday night. We go to school on Monday. We can't get people there. If you put us on a Saturday night, we're going to pack this place. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you a Sunday night on a 3-day weekend when you don't have school on a Monday.
Wow.
So he gave us March 27th. And man, we packed that place. And the deal was, it was $4 to get in. People that came in without a ticket, we got 85 cents of that $4. They gave us a stack of tickets. We got like a hefty bag full of tickets. And we went to the stationery place and we bought 4 rubber stamps with our logo. And we got all our siblings to stamp frequency, and all the tickets. And then I had my sister. I have a sister who's a year younger than me. Mm-hmm. I said to her, Heather, listen to me. You sit by the ticket booth and you count every one of those tickets that comes in. I don't want these guys screwing us at the end of the night on the money. Wow. I'm 13 years old and I'm shrewd like that, you know? That's
amazing.
Yeah. So we made money, bro. We made like almost $500 that night. And the guy was so happy he couldn't wait to book us again. We packed his club on a Sunday night.
Wow.
So that was my first gig ever, man. And I remember we rented Marshall full stacks from SIR and the whole thing, man.
Yeah. As a kid from Broomfield, Colorado, that's just, I mean, I have so much the same story, you know, and in fact, we had a recording studio move into our town when I was 14. And when I discovered it, I borrowed money from my grandparents. I'm like, I got to go in and do a tune. And I played all the instruments and whatever. But I didn't have the Troubadour to go to, you know, and my dad was super supportive as well and let us rehearse in the house. You know, we got to play inside the house, so we didn't get the cops called as much, you know, but just when I hear a story about like that and just the access that you had.
I'm so lucky, man. I really am. I'm so lucky. I got to see all these guys, Warren DeMartini and George Lynch and all these guys when they were just playing at the Troupe and playing it at Gazzari's and I remember seeing Jakey Lee play. He was in a band called Rough Cut.
Wow.
And because I would go after school on the days when we weren't doing band practice, I would just drive up Doheny to the Troubadour. And I'd go in the back door at 4 PM and when they're loading in for sound check. And I would just sit there in the balcony and watch all these bands that became super, super huge, famous bands. Black and Blue and Poison and all those bands, Rat, all those guys, Wasp. And I remember seeing Stryper and getting hit in the head with a Bible. And I got hit with raw meat at a Wasp concert and, all that stuff, man. I was a kid, but they let us in.
Yeah.
It was great. And then when I got a little older in high school, somebody turned me on to Steve Lukather.
Yeah.
I was real into George Lynch and Warren DeMartini and Eddie Van Halen. Like, those were my guys.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody turned me on to Steve Lukather, and I didn't get Toto at first. They were a little too kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Theatrical, maybe.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean? They were just a little too, like there was very very involved keyboard arrangements and some of that stuff. When you listen to stuff like
musical theater, meaning
it was kind of like when you listen to stuff like Hydra, and I listen to it now and I'm just in awe, man.
Yeah.
I'm just in awe. Look, God, this stuff is amazing. And Steve Lukather's like a teenager playing on this record, like the first Toto record. He's like 19.
Oh man.
And he's playing with such a maturity, man.
Right.
He plays on this song called Chloe, a really old Elton John song. And Jeff Porcaro plays drums on it. And he does the solo on it. And you can play it here. He's playing a 335. And I thought for sure it was Larry Carlton. And then I read that, no, it's Steve Lukather. And I called him up and I'm like, what's up with Chloe, man? He goes, man, that was one of the first big sessions I did after high school. And he goes, I was trying to be like Larry, and I brought a 335 and a volume pedal. And I said, how can you play? I mean, when I was 19, 20 years old, I could play anything but tastefully.
Exactly, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
And I was just, I was listening to the wrong guys. He was listening to Carlton and Jay Graydon and Tommy Tedesco, and he was listening to those cats. And I was listening to Warren DeMartini and George Lynch. And so I started listening to Steve Lukather and Landau, and go to the Baked Potato and seeing Charisma and Los Lobotomies and all that stuff. And and I became friends with those guys. I'm sure you're friends with those guys too. We're all local cats and we all become friends, That's
another thing that you don't get when you're from a small town is like everything seems so far away, which is another thing I love about living in LA anyways, because you get here and then you start watching TV and you're like, hey, that's the pub in my neighborhood, or that's the, and you're like, oh, all of a sudden you realize now it seems like TV is made for you. Because it's all about you. There's so many things are LA or New York, So what do you think? I mean, having come from all that, like, what are your thoughts about the LA as a music town in general now? Right. It doesn't feel like that anymore to me.
It's definitely not. It's not a music town anymore because music isn't really in need of a music town anymore.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It's just not. So for me, what it was I grew up in LA, and so if I grew up in some small town, I probably would have had to be as good as the best guitar player in my high school,
right?
But I grew up in LA, so I got to go see Larry Carlton play right in front of me, and Robin Ford and Lukather and Landau and Carl Verheyen, and like I could see these guys a foot in front of me.
Right.
And that was what I had to get. I had to get there. I had to get at that level, at least try. You know what I mean? Because if I want to be able to work, I was a band guy most of my life until my early, from 13 until about 21, I was a band guy. I wasn't thinking about being a session player. I wasn't thinking about being a sideman. I was going to be a rock star, man. You know what I mean? I was going to be Warren DeMartini. I was really into Living Color, and I was playing on the Sunset Strip, and I was 18, 19 years old. I had a black lead singer in my band, and we were playing like funky metal stuff, kind of like what Extreme is like, and that band Living Color.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody got it, and that's okay, but I got a gig. There's a band called Hamilton, Joe Frank and Reynolds. They were like a soft rock band from the 70s. We call it yacht rock now.
Right. Yeah.
And they had two big hit songs. One was called Falling in Love. Baby, baby, falling in love.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Falling in love. Right. And the other one was Don't Pull Your Love Out on Me.
Oh, yeah. Don't pull your love out on me.
That's the one.
Yes.
So the lead singer and guitar player, his name's Dan Hamilton, and it's a really convoluted story, but he's kind of like an uncle to me that isn't related to me. Basically, his wife and sister-in-law introduced my mom to my dad in high school.
Oh, wow.
So he's kind of like a godfather, if you will, or he was an avuncular figure in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And he was when I was playing at the Troubadour when I was 13, and he was there at the gig, and he's the one who told my parents, you should encourage this. He's got that air quotes it thing.
Mm-hmm.
You should he's got the potential. So he was hiring me to do some local stuff around town. When I turned 21, they brought me on the road, and I went to Vegas with them, and I had a ball. It was my first time like being on the road as a side guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was young. I was 21, and everybody in the band is like 50.
Right.
You know, and like over it, and like, oh, we got one more set to do, you know, like those guys. I'm like, when are we playing again? You know what I mean? And they wanted me to be shreddy guy. They're like, you know, no, like take solos and all the songs and play whatever you want, man. We want that young gun shreddy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool, man. So at the end of the week, he came up to me and he handed me an envelope that had 8 crisp $100 bills in it. And I think we did a 4-nighter. I think it was $200 a night. I never asked about the money. To me, I didn't care. I was like, I was out of my mom's house and I was playing my guitar in Las fucking Vegas, man. and I was, you know, hanging out with cocktail waitresses till all hours of the night. I was having a great time, you know? So I thought to myself, I didn't have to worry about a bass player who isn't good enough to play the music I write. I didn't have to worry about a drummer that wants to co-write the songs with me because he can play 2 bar chords on his beat up acoustic guitar. I don't have to worry about a lead singer who's more concerned about getting blowjobs than finishing his lyrics.
Right.
I don't have to worry about all these managers at all these nightclubs that don't pay me what they say they're going to pay me at the end of the night. I don't have to worry about any of this crap anymore. I just show up and play my guitar and get paid. Huh. Yeah. What do you know about that?
Yeah, man.
So it really changed my perspective a lot, man. It kind of took the artist hat off and it put the sideman hat on. Yeah. I'm not sure if it was the right decision or not. I mean, I've had a good life. I've had a good career. You know, the whole scene moved to Seattle not long after that anyways, right around that time, you know. It literally just picked up. I mean, you weren't here yet, right? At that time. No, the way it used to work was you put a band together and you go and you play at the Roxy, the Whiskey, or Gazzari's, or there's a place called Raji's. There's some other, there was Madame Wong's East and West, and there's the Troubadour. And you build, and you know, we had this magazine called Rock City News and BAM. Oh, wow. And you put ads in those magazines for your show. And you had to take the sexiest, coolest looking picture to put in those magazines. Otherwise the girls weren't going to come. And the dudes don't come to your show if the girls aren't coming to your show. Right. So you had to have your hair really big. You had to have the killing clothes. You had to have a girlfriend that had a good job so she could buy you all this shit that you needed, you know? Seriously, I'm not even joking. That's how it was in those days. Yeah. You know, all the guys in bands had girlfriends that had normal jobs and supported our musical habit, if you will, and bought our hairstylings and our cool clothing that we had to buy on Melrose from New York, from the guy Cosmo that was there. And we all went, everybody shopped at the same stores and bought the same shit, and you'd find a new way to rip it differently. Oh, I'm going to do like that, you know. But you would poster Sunset all the way from where the Whiskey is to Doheny. Every light post would literally just be postered with flyers, with the tabs you pull off, and you bring the tab and you get a discount door. And the street would be full of people. It was such a scene, man. It was like Mardi Gras in New Orleans. It was just every night, just people in the street dressed with the hair and in the full regalia, man. Yeah. Full 80s hairband regalia, everybody, guys and girls. The rainbow, people pouring out of the rainbow every night. And it was literally just what it seemed like. It was that way. Like when you look at a Rat video, or you know, that's what it was like. And then all of a sudden, just boom. You'd start your band, you get a following, you move to a later time slot, you get a Friday night, then you get a Saturday night, then you get to play at Gazzari's because it was the biggest place. And when you'd sell out Gazzari's on a Saturday night, and sometimes you'd get 2 shows on a Saturday night because you'd sell it out and they'd clear the house and bring it in. Then the labels were coming to see you. Right. you know, and you might get a demo deal. They might give you $5,000 to go make a demo. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And now none of that happens. Now you buy a laptop and you open up GarageBand and you have a palette of drum beats and you click on them until you hear one you like, and then you grab it and you drop it on a timeline, and then you go to the bass. A monkey can make music now.
Right.
It's changed the business, you know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, you know.
Right. But before that though, it seems to me like the pay to play started to happen as well, which to me, like now when you go down to the Whiskey and you want to get a gig,
right,
you know, it's completely up to you. There's no scene. Like you're saying, there were people everywhere. So all you had to do is get their attention. Now there's no scene. There's nobody there.
And they used to book like bands. So they would book 4 or 5 bands a night. And when they booked you, you might have to wait. Okay, call me next week. I don't have a night that's right for your band yet.
Yeah.
Because they want you at the 8 o'clock slot to bring in your 40 or 50 people. And then they're going to stay for the next band. If they like you, they wanted not bands that were identical to each other, but at least in the same stratosphere of one another. You know what I mean? They don't care about any of that anymore. No. But the pay to play thing had to happen. Because what happened was, because I was in it before it was pay to play and I was in it after it was pay to play. And pay to play benefited me.
Interesting.
Because it had to happen, because by the late 80s, by 86-ish, every band from every place in this country was loading up their van and leaving their small town and moving to LA to become big rock stars. And then they booked bands. They booked a show at the Troubadour or the Whiskey, and 3 people came. And the clubs started losing money like crazy. So they had to. So really what the pay to play, I don't know how it works now. Then the way they did it was you had to buy 50 tickets at, say, $5 a pop. So when you book the show, they'll front you the 50 tickets, and at sound check, you have to give them $250. And that's how it worked. So what I said, because I was a local guy and I had no problem with a following, because everybody in my band were native guys, and you know we'd been here our whole lives, I said to the guy, I'll tell you what, give me 50 tickets, right? I'll sell them for $5 a pop. And then I'm going to come back and I want you to give me unlimited tickets for free. And they were fine with that.
Right.
So literally 4 or 5, maybe a week later, I'd come back and I'd have the $250 for them, and I'd bring an empty hefty bag with me, a big 40-gallon laundry, garden bag, and I'd say fill it up, and they'd fill it up with tickets, and we would either give them away or sell them.
Right.
And we'd make tons of money. We would make very good profit.
Wow.
We're selling them to our aunts, our uncles, our cousins, our guys that we're selling them. Every guy in the band is selling 40 tickets easily.
Right. Wow.
So and that's all money in our pocket. Because I've given them the $250.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's great for established situations like yours.
Right.
But now it's to the point where it's like, now you sell your, 40, maybe you get 29 people to come down. They stay for a set and then they leave.
Right.
Because they're not there for a night of music. They're there because, well, my friend gave me a ticket, or
Right. Right.
And the clubs don't seem to care. That's never going to change unless you start sort of putting some more promotion back into that. And it also means that the bands that get to play are the ones that can bring people, not the ones that are worthy of being seen out of their garage. There used to be some sort of filter, like, the Troubadour dude made you get a demo and it had to be a certain quality.
Right.
Now it's,
not to keep bringing up Steve Lukather, but he said, it used to be a lot of people had to like you before you could make an album.
Right. Exactly.
Your girlfriend, your girlfriends had to like you, and then you had to book a gig, and the people that came to you, the people at the club had to like you, the owner of the club, the booker at the club had to like you. Then you had to have enough people for a following to come like you so that the club would book you again.
Right.
And then somebody from the record company would have to come out and they would have to like you. And then they'd have to go tell their bosses at the label, and the boss at the label would have to like you enough to go to their boss to give you money to go to a studio. A whole bunch of people had to like you before you could even make a record. Now, anybody can make a record. Anybody can make a record.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it.
So it's devalued music. It's completely devalued music.
Right. Yeah. And we all kind of are feeling we all suffer because of it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you're a Berkeley guy. I'm an MI guy. You know, I mean, we put in the work, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And all that being said, you know, this show is kind of a lot about loving Los Angeles, you know, and that's like from put together a band and come here and try to make it standpoint. That's dead. But that doesn't mean there's still not a lot of opportunity here for musicians and for music, you know.
My wife moved to LA. So she's a lawyer and a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
She moves to LA and she's just like, I can't believe how open to ideas people are here. You have creative ideas and everybody's open. They don't look at you like you're a three-headed monster. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, everybody's so open and creative, and they're open to yoga, and they're open to healing things and positivity and good energy and all this hippie kind of stuff, you know? And I'm like, yeah, they are. I mean, you have that, and you have the type A, you know, business people that are, you have it all there, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, look, it's my city. I grew up there. I was born there.
Yeah.
I was actually born in Hollywood. But I love it, man. I'll never live anywhere else. I really can't see myself living anywhere else full time.
Well, you've made an amazing career.
Thank you.
In a diverse career, which I really think is pretty cool. I mean, you do a lot of smooth jazz, mostly smooth jazz now, I guess, but that doesn't mean you can't work your way awesomely through a Journey tribute band or whatever. You know, you have
I love it.
Super diverse player, and it's reflected in your resume and your bio. And you know, actually, before we go, we should talk about your solo stuff.
Okay, cool. The first album is called Identity. I did that album because after playing with Dave Cause, we went to this burger joint in LA that you know about, but for those people elsewhere, there's a very iconic burger joint in LA called the Apple Pan.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to the Apple Pan and we're eating, and he looks at me and he says, how come you don't have an album? He says, everybody on the cruise knows you, and you walk up and down the hallways and everybody knows Jay Gore. He says, but you don't have an album. I said, I've never done an album, a Jay Gore album, because I don't know what kind of album I would do. I would feel that I need to do a smooth jazz album because that's my fan base at this point in my life.
Right.
But I'm a rock and roller and I love playing acoustic guitar. And he said, do it all, man. People want a Jay Gore album. So I did Identity. And that's why it's Identity. And it's got all the weird tuning, Michael Hedges, acoustic guitar kind of stuff. I did a couple tunes. Peter White and I co-wrote a song that was a single, went to number 6 on the charts called BFF.
Yeah. How did that come about?
I was thinking in a business way. I was thinking if I want to get on the radio, it would be cool if I had a single that had a big name on it. And Peter and I are really, really close because we did a package with Mindy, and he and I just bonded because Peter's a big rock and roll guy. No. You can't stump Peter on rock tunes at all. You can call out anything from Emerson, Lake and Palmer to April Wine. He knows it all. He'll just sit there and play all. He knows it all, and he's got such an ear. If he's ever heard a song, he can just ear his way through it. It's incredible.
Wow.
So I said, hey man, I'm going to do my first record, and I would love it. I'd be so honored if you would either produce my record for me, or produce one song, or co-write, or do a guest spot. I want you involved in some way, whatever you're comfortable with. He goes, I would love to write a song with you. He goes, I don't have time to produce it or engineer it or anything like that, but I'll track my guitars. We'll write. So I wrote the main riff of the tune and the melody, and he wrote the whole bridge section, and he did the arranging of he taught me this great thing. He says, in pop song, he goes, you've written a pop song here called a smooth jazz song, but it's in the key of D and it starts on a D chord. And then the chorus, we have a pre-chorus, and then we go to the next chorus, which also starts on a D chord. To make it pop, there's a rule. The pre-chorus cannot be 4 divisible bars. It cannot be a 4-bar pre-chorus. It cannot be an 8-bar pre-chorus or 12-bar or 16-bar. It has to be 5 bars or 7 bars or 6. He goes, listen to Jump by Van Halen. He actually told me this. Listen to Jump by Van Halen. Can't you see me standing here? I got my back against the wreck. It's like a 9 or 10 bar pre-chorus because it's the same progression in the chorus as in the verse.
Gotcha.
So in order for that chorus to pop, the pre-chorus has to be not divisible by 4.
Whoa, trippy. Never thought about that. I'm going to go back and listen to songs now.
Yeah. So I did that. We added an extra bar in there. He did very cleverly, and we wrote the song, and the radio guys loved it, and that's how that happened. And I wrote with this guy Ernie Halter, a beautiful song. He's a great singer.
Yeah, I know Ernie. It's great.
And I wrote with Connie Lim, who's an amazing singer, and I wrote with Shane August. So there's a couple vocal tunes on there.
Summer dream, so it seems. And if I were the spring, I'd stick around until the falling autumn leaves hit the ground. They're falling down, falling down.
But then for the next album, I decided I want to do an artist album.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's Guitarnica. And I thought, what do I want? I love when I come to Europe and I hear that stuff they're playing at the beaches, that real kind of electronic, like kind of mid-tempo, Enigma, Massive Attack, Thievery Corporation kind of stuff with electric overdrive guitar on it, but not shreddy, not going into Satriani land.
Right.
You know, staying more in Gilmore, Jeff Beck land.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of time really, if you listen to Guitarnica, man, the guitar tone, I spent a lot of time really cultivating that tone. I had it in my head. I actually had to have a guitar kind of specifically made for it. Tyler, you know, I use James Tyler guitars and Ernie Ball guitars, but mostly, you know, Jim Tyler's a very good friend of mine and an incredible guitar maker. And I talked to him. I said, look, this is what I want to do. And I want a guitar that's just, you know, a humbucker and a single coil neck and nothing in the middle. And we designed the guitar, and I wanted a different kind of neck shape. And we did all that. And then it was a matter of taking all my amplifiers out of my storage unit and plugging them in and tweaking the tones and recording things. To see how they sounded recording. And finally I came up with the right gumbo, you know? And I used it for every song. Every song's the same amp and the same guitar on that album. And that's it. I wanted like I wanted to have a sound for the first time in my life, not just be studio guy.
Yeah.
You know, showing up with because I did that whole thing, man, where I had the cartage guy, Lon Cohen and a roadie that carried all my shit, and I had all the Bradshaw gear and trunks full of, you know, I'd show up with 15 guitars and 15 amplifiers and Bradshaw, all that shit, man.
Wow.
And you're just the guy they want, you know what I mean? You're like, and it was, what's sad because I didn't get to be a Luke or a Landau, because when I showed up to sessions, that's what they wanted. Give us like a Landau thing here, you know?
Right.
Give us a Lukather thing here. And I don't go, hey man, I'm Jay Gore. I'm like, I'm honored that you think I can even try to do that shit for you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Guitarnica is my baby, man. I mean, I love Identity. I made Identity in like 2.5 months. Guitarnica took me a year.
Wow.
To write it and get the tones the way I wanted it. And I don't get anal about shit. I don't sit there and retrack over and over and over again. You know, I'm not that guy, you know.
Right.
I want the energy of it being a fresh performance.
Right.
And there's an improvised section in all of the songs, even though they're structured songs. There's definitely a guitar solo, if you will, in the songs that gets away from the melodic part. Right. But I'm really proud of it, and I really want to work that. I really want to get gigs doing that as an artist, doing my Guitarnica thing.
That's awesome.
You know? Yeah.
So if people want to get it, it's only available at your website.
It's on jgore.com. Yeah.
Great. Excellent.
Or guitronica.net. Yeah. Either one.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's really been awesome talking to you, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you calling me for this, man. I really do.
Well, I've silently looked up to you throughout the years, and so I hope we get to play together, in the future on something.
Absolutely, man. I have the highest respect for you, man. I really do. I think you're a very talented cat and a nice guy. I definitely would love to do something in the future. I have to say before we go, there's two things I need to plug.
Absolutely.
They're not available yet. I'm working on two things right now. One is I'm working on a book,
cool.
an autobiography, where I will tell all these stories and I'll get into. I'm going to meet with a lawyer and find out, like, do I have to change people's names, all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because I got dirt on people that they probably don't want to hear about it. And then the other thing is I'm in the middle of putting together, like a whole coaching thing, like a video coaching. Yeah. And it's going to do everything from like how to audition properly, how to put your gear together for specific gigs, proper etiquette on a tour bus, proper etiquette in an airport, proper etiquette when you're, how to be the guy. You don't have to be the greatest guitar player in the world, but you have to be somebody that people want to live with on a bus for 6 months.
Right. Exactly.
That kind of stuff.
Something we talk about a lot on this show.
Right. This is going to be listen, there are a million guys on YouTube all teaching you how to play Eruption better than I can. So I'm not going in there. I'm not going there. But I have, look, I've played with Michael Bolton. I've played with Michael McDonald. They're two very different Michaels. They're two very different Michaels. I've played with Lauryn Hill and I've played with Warren Hill. They're two very different Hills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? I played with Eddie Money. I've played with, so many people I've played with, but every gig is different. And how do you walk into these gigs? How do you get these gigs? How do you keep these gigs? The most important thing.
Yeah.
All that stuff. How does it work? How does a tour manager work? How does getting up every day and going to the next town? How does all that work?
Right.
I'm going to be doing seminar, coaching courses on all of these things.
Well, that's amazing. That's excellent. Yeah. Well, when you get both of these things done, come back on my podcast and let's talk all about them specifically. And
awesome.
And make it happen. Because it's
really good to see you and talk to you, man. Really
absolutely.
good.
Even if it is, we're 10,000 miles apart or something crazy shit.
Something like that. When I get back in town, I'll hit you up. We'll go grab some lunch.
That sounds perfect. Oh man, I love hearing that firsthand, story about what LA was like in the 80s because I just was so obsessed as a kid and only could watch it on TV, I also love when he said he had fallen into smooth jazz and it wasn't what he had planned for his life, because I think that's something that a lot of sidemen and women have in common. Usually we don't start out to be hired guns, but the opportunities present themselves and we jump and we want to make a living playing music. So let's just do it. But a lot of times that means kind of leaving your dreams behind. I wanted to be a lead singer and a songwriter, a rock star when I first started. But the opportunity to just play my bass and get paid kept coming up. And that's what people wanted from me at the time. So eventually I just started saying yes. And that decision has provided me with, a crazy awesome life. Once I gave in to that notion that I'm supposed to be a bass player, it led me to everything else I wanted. Now I have my own records. I've written hundreds of songs, and some of them have been on TV and in films and have been sung by other artists. I've toured with my own band, and I've been able to play with some of my heroes, all because I just followed that path that was right in front of me. And I didn't resist, or I stopped resisting. I resisted for a minute, but I stopped resisting, and the whole world kind of opened up, Could I have been the next Elton John? I'll never know. But when I look back at my life, I'm definitely in awe of everything that I've been able to do. And sometimes those things that you wanted, they show up. They just don't look like you thought they were going to look. So I've been able to use my bass playing and those opportunities to steer my life in a direction of getting all those things, one way or another. So sometimes it's good to just, follow that path that's kind of been laid out in front of you and don't resist and work hard and stay focused. I also thought it was cool that he brought up the story of leaving Mindi Abair's gig, because we rarely talk about how gigs end on this show. It's all about how did people get the gigs. You know, when Mindy called him and wanted to go in a different direction, and that's not a rare thing. You know, some artists do it often, and at least she called him, because sometimes you just won't even get a call, and you'll see a tour on an artist website and you just won't be on it. I've had it happen. This business is brutal sometimes, and it can change at any time. So you kind of have to be ready and aware of that. And it's a tricky thing as a sideman too, because I want to provide as creative a space for the artist that I'm working for as I possibly can. And sometimes that might mean I'm no longer the right guy for the gig, you know? So it's devastating every time it happens, but at the same time, it's sort of part of my job to accept that and to be cool with it. It's pretty common that, you know, you'll be used in the band, you'll be in the band, but you won't be used on the record, or you'll do a record with somebody and they have their own band, so you're not going to go out with that. Sometimes it can be financial, and that's always a drag. But sometimes it's just creativity and where that artist wants to take the next record or wants to take the next look of the band, or you name it. It's a tricky thing, but the best thing I think is to not take things personal and make sure you watch your back and you have a long list of people that you can call and clients that you work for so you can keep your career moving forward. Cartage is a term that I had to learn when I got here. It's basically a local roadie. Some guys will come and get your stuff and take it to your gig, set it up, and then do it all in reverse when you're done. And other companies will store your gear for you and just show up wherever you tell them. And it kind of depends on how much money you want to spend. And it's a back saver, absolutely, if you can afford it. Backlining gear basically means renting gear. On smaller tours, they will rent a lot of the gear, like amps and all the heavy stuff, and they'll rent it in each town that you play. So you should have a backline list of gear that you prefer to use, and it's advisable to keep it common, because most backline companies will have like the most common and popular brands, but if they don't, then you never know what you're going to get, especially when you're in Eastern Europe or Russia or, you know, South Africa, some of the places that don't have access to really obscure, you know, brands of gear. They'll have Fender and Ampeg, you know, or not even that sometimes. You know, I've had to make the best of some really bad gear before, but you just do what you got to do. Watercolors is a smooth jazz channel on Sirius XM. I believe it's channel 66. And I couldn't believe that Poughkeepsie, New York was the most obscure name that he could think of when, you know, talking about backline stuff. I've heard a lot of people say that throughout my life, and I've always noticed because I was born at Vassar Hospital in Poughkeepsie, New York.
I'm a dive bar rock star.
Wow, you've made it to the end. I'm hoping it's because you completely enjoyed yourself and are now filled with knowledge and inspiration to move forward with your dreams. If that is the case and you would like to stay informed of new episodes, live events, and general news, please go to divebarrockstar.com and sign up for the mailing list. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, or complaints about anything you hear on the show, please email me at fanmail@divebarrockstar.com, and you may even end up on the show. We at the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, with all of our hearts, thank you for listening, and remember, it's all about dreams.